Hello there, this is Pilgrim with another episode of Day Trips. Today we will be visiting the Isteiner Klotz, which, just like Augusta Raurica, is also quite close to Basel. However, it's not east of Basel, but north instead. The distance, however, is roughly the same. I'll show you using the same map we used last time. If we zoom in as much as possible, while still keeping both locations on screen, it looks like this. Augusta Raurica is down to the right, and the Isteiner Klotz is up to the left. Now that we have established that, let's zoom in. There, this rock formation in the middle is the Isteiner Klotz. The German word Klotz meaning boulder or large rock. However, while the term Isteiner Klotz usually refers to the rock formation you see here, it is also the name used for the larger area, which would be this one. However, for now we will use this designation exclusively for the rock formation you're looking at the moment. The name Istein, by the way, is the name of the village close by, therefore the name Isteiner Klotz. For the sake of simplicity, I will also call it the rock every now and then. It's a pretty small piece of real estate we'll be exploring today, however it is of great importance. And I will tell you why right away. Just look at where we are. The river to the left is the Rhine, which is, in this case, also the border to France. Just to the right of it, a German motorway, an important traffic artery. Just a bit further, another important German road, a highway, and, even further to the right, a little bit higher, a railway track. I guess by now you already realized by yourself why this little piece of land is so important. Or, at the very least, used to be very important. Let's zoom in just a little bit more. This is the best picture Google Maps can provide. Let me just rotate it. There, as you can see, the Rhine is now in the upper left of the picture. And you can easily tell, by the size of the cars on the road, that the distance to the river, and therefore the border, is very small indeed. Emerging from a higher plateau, the rock stretches like a finger roughly in the direction of the Rhine. Now that we have established exactly where we are, it is time for us to get down there. We will start with the northern end of the railroad tunnel and move around counterclockwise. As you can see, this gate is from a time when they still bothered to make even something as mundane as a railroad tunnel actually look good. Best guess, mid-19th century. However, don't get carried away and make sure to keep your distance, because, yeah, that's why. Moving towards the rock now. This was in summer 2024, and as you can see, vegetation is pretty dense. If you look very closely, you can also see that there's something going on up there. See that little tree? What I'm talking about is directly below. Keep your eyes on that area as we move around and close the distance. You should be able to see it now. It's an artifact from times gone by. One of many the rock has to offer. Now focus your attention on this area. What do you think how this shape was formed? Any guesses? Take your time. We will look into that shortly. This is the rock, looking at it head on. But before we get any closer, here's some background information. For this is not only a site of historic importance, but also a nature preserve. However, this does not only concern flora and fauna, but also geology. Therefore, this area is not only a biotope, but also a geotope. The plaque you can see to the right is from on-site. It's in German, of course, but I will translate and read it to you, giving you a broad overview. The Isteiner rock is a 150 million year old coral reef with a multi-layered tertiary cap approximately 70 million years old. The Rhine, flowing at high level approximately 600,000 years ago, carved out about 100 caves. From 12,000 BC, Stone Age people settled in caves and on the plateau, mining jasper. Apparently back then jasper was a very popular gem used for jewelry, but it was also used for tools. Interestingly, Wikipedia lists the mining of flint, also known as flintstone instead, which is also listed on one of the panels I came across later. Therefore, I suspect both was the case, as the two minerals appear to be variations of quartz, therefore closely related. In the Bronze Age, around 2000 BC, the Isteiner ceramic culture flourished. From approximately 500 BC to 500 AD, Celtic, Roman, Alemannic settlement. There are a number of Roman ruins in the region, however nothing of note in the direct vicinity of the rock. and none of them as significant as Augusta Raurica, which we already visited. I'll put a link to that video in the credits. From 700 AD, Christianization. Around 1100 to 1200, construction of the double castle by the bishops of Basel and construction of the St. Vitus Chapel. 1409 to 11, conquest and demolition of the fortress by the Basel army. German Wikipedia of early 2026 states, the interim owners of the pledged castle included Jakob von Waldkron, Werner Schaler, the city of Basel, Austria, Burkhard Münch von Landskron, the elder and the younger, the counts of Freiburg, and the markgrafs of Sausenberg. So, for all of those out there wondering, most likely the castle was not property of the bishops of Basel at the time it was destroyed by the Basel army. 1840 to 70, Tullas Rhine correction. This refers to the river engineering efforts which were undertaken at that time, basically restricting the Rhine to the riverbed it occupies today. 1900 to 1914 and 1936 to 1939, fortification construction. 1919 and 1947 to 1949, massive explosions destroyed the fortress and the rock. Wikipedia states, due to the straightening of the Rhine, the construction of the Rhine Valley Railway, the building of fortifications and several war-related demolitions, the Isteiner Klotz was significantly altered from 1850 onwards and has shrunk to a tenth of its original size. The last bit mentions who donated this plaque. It was a bank. Sparka, which is short for Sparkasse, Markgräflerland. Do not bother to look this up on English Wikipedia, or the French one for that matter. There is no entry. As of the point of recording, only entries in 3 languages exist. German, Alemannic, which is a German dialect, and, for some bizarre reason, Latin. Certainly did not expect the last one. Anyway, as far as I'm aware, this makes me the only English language source for this site. Didn't expect that, but I'm quite happy with it. But enough with that. Back to the rock itself and the unusual shape of the tip. I said I would tell you how this came to be, but since we're here, I might as well show you. In order to do that, however, we need to get somewhat closer. Do you see those markings at the bottom? Those are historical, by the way, which means from the mid-19th century. People used to mark the water level that way, which provides us with the answer why the rock looks the way it does. Part of the stone was washed away by the river, which means if we had visited this place on September the 18th, 1852, we would have been able to swim right here where we are standing. No such luck today, but then again I didn't bring my bathing suit anyway. Time to take a look at the chapel. It's quite a beautiful sight, like straight from the pages of a fantasy novel. How do you like it? Let me know in the comments. When moving around all the way, the fact that this used to be a cliff at a river becomes even more obvious. The staircase leading up to the chapel is just a little bit to the right. So let's get up there and take a look inside. In this shot you can see the entire interior of the chapel, with the chapel itself located at the back end. The door through which we entered is up to the right. The oil painting above the chapel gate is especially interesting. It shows how the rock used to look in previous times. Here is a close-up for you. The chapel itself is somewhat barren. It's mostly the location that makes it special. Looking into the other direction, you can see some info panels on the wall to the left. Here's a close-up of the first 2. The left one tells the story of the rebuilding of the chapel from 1988 to 1989. It lists who exactly was involved and who donated money in order to get it done. The one on the right contains historical information. Let me translate for you. St. Vitus Chapel. Around 600,000 BC, this grotto was eroded by the Rhine River, which flowed 30 meters higher at the time. From 12,000 BC onwards, Stone Age people established the Isteiner Jasper culture in approximately 100 caves. Legend of the Klotzen serpent. The later seems to refer to a local legend I am not familiar with. Around 2000 BC, Isteiner pottery. Between 200 and 300 AD, Scheffel's Hugidio witnessed the downfall of Augusta Raurica here. Around 700 AD, Christianization. The grotto was presumably inhabited by hermits. Between 1100 to 1200, construction of the St. Vitus Chapel. Saint Vitus being identical with Saint Vite, a Sicilian martyr, killed in boiling oil, one of the 14 holy helpers. Patron saint against falling sickness, meaning epilepsy, called Saint Vitus' dance in the Middle Ages. The chapel was inhabited at times. Also a place of pilgrimage for protection against floods. The chapel included Saint John of Nepomuk, the patron saint of bridges and the Mount of Olives, to the right of the chapel with approximately 8 wooden figures. The chapel was destroyed during the fortress demolition in 1947 to 1949. The later date being the second time the chapel was destroyed. Apparently it was also destroyed when the 2 castles were. So it was destroyed twice, but rebuilt both times. Here's a collection of pictures of how the rock used to look. I'll zoom in on 2 of them, but unfortunately the resolution is not very high. This one is from 1800 and the second one 1850. So much for that. Let's find out what's behind door number 2. Not very much, unfortunately. See this gate up there? This is how far we can go. I don't think they ever opened this up, which means there's no way to get on top of the rock from here. We'll have to find another way. Unfortunately, the view is restricted by vegetation, since we are roughly at the height of the treetops. Meaning you can't see very much. Only the top of the church tower is just about visible, which means we have to look for higher ground elsewhere. Let's turn around for now and follow the rock in a northeastern direction. But before we do, here is some more history for you concerning the early 20th century. This map covers the fortress Istein, which existed from 1900 to 1921 as part of the German Empire. It was quite a considerable fortification. Let's take a closer look at the map. According to this key, the largest guns used had a caliber of 10 centimeters and were placed in 3 batteries of 2 guns each. We are talking about concrete bunkers with armored turrets here, by the way. The guns were not just sitting out in the open. As you can see, the fortress was located on the plateau behind the rock. However, after the defeat of the First World War, the fortress was demolished. Apparently they did a pretty thorough job doing it, for I was unable to find any remains using Google Maps. I guess some parts must have survived, but it really can't be much. When I superimposed a current map on the historic one, I couldn't find anything at all, which is why I decided against searching the plateau myself. However, in the years leading up to World War II, the area was fortified once again, as can be seen here. The fortification was structured quite differently this time, with the rock itself being included as well. The whole installation was part of a larger fortification network known as the Westwall, meaning Western Bulwark, usually referred to as Siegfried Line in the English language. When it comes down to it, this fortification network was the German equivalent to the French Maginot Line, intended to defend Germany's western border, with the rock being the southern end of it. Following the defeat of the Second World War, however, this fortification was destroyed as well, but not completely. Parts of the tunnel system remained, and was still in use by the German army as late as the early 2000s. So we have finally found something to look at, and we will do so right away. We don't have to go far either. Look what I found in the direct vicinity of the chapel. A small room consisting of reinforced concrete, which usually means 20th century. It's quite tight. My guess is that this used to be one of the forward machine gun positions. There also are pieces of armor plate, roughly 5 centimeters strong. However, this chamber is not isolated, for there is a tunnel at the back end leading deeper into the rock. Unfortunately, it's mostly blocked by debris, but we won't let that stop us. So let's get in there. From the looks of it, this tunnel goes all the way through. Can you see the light at the other end? There's also another tunnel meeting this one at a roughly 90-degree angle, meaning this tunnel is roughly shaped like the letter T. Here's a picture of it. It seems to lead further in, following the shape of the rock. But let's continue straight on for now. Just in case you are wondering how tight it is in here, I'm on my knees, crawling. There is no other way. Looks like we indeed managed to reach the other side. Can you see the barbed wire over there? Well, there's no way I'm crawling through that. But just in case you are wondering how I spent my hot summer days, crawling around World War II bunkers. That's how. At least it is cool down here. Quite chilly actually. At this point I decided to crawl back out again. My apologies, I hope you are not too disappointed. But nobody knows where I am, and if I get lost in here or stuck in some way, they'll never find what's left of me. And I don't want to go out like this. I'd rather fall from a church tower or something. But for the moment the rock will have to do. Let's climb up somewhat further and see what we can find. As you can see, we are finally starting to clear the treetop. Although the village is still largely hidden, something else has come into view instead. I'm talking about the factory, located roughly in the middle of the picture. It's a limestone quarry. And just in case this wasn't clear yet, the rock also consists of limestone. What you're looking at here is the opposite side of the so-called Isteiner Bucht, meaning Bay of Istein, sometimes also referred to as Basel's Italy, because of the higher than average temperatures around here. As I understand it, this is mostly caused by its distinct geological makeup. This is the view in the direction of France. We are now above the chapel and continue to climb further. Here's another piece of evidence that proves that the rock used to be fortified. A small piece of concrete with steel bars sticking out. Hardly a natural phenomenon. Here's a closer look at it. And it gets better still. Look what we have here. An opening leading into the rock, which has been sealed shut. And, just left of it, a passageway leading to the other side. But before we attend to that, let's have a look at this first. Especially the little window. Unfortunately, the camera I used back then did not cope very well with low light conditions. But you can still see that this is not just a small cave. It's more like a tunnel. The writing you can see on the left-hand side is also interesting. It's hardly made by a professional, but I think it's still significant. Are you able to read it? I don't know about you, but to me it looks like the word Grüne, which is German for green. Now, what does that mean? Remember the map of the World War II fortifications I showed you earlier? Let me bring it back up again. Let's focus on this specific section. As you can see, the tunnels used to be color-coded. So I suspect the word Grüne refers to the Grüne Galerie or Green Gallery, which means our current position would be roughly here. It also means that the tunnel we explored earlier was probably part of the Blue Gallery down below. Of course I cannot be certain, but it would make sense. With that being said, let's move on and climb up there. It's not a difficult climb by any means, but you have to be careful. You could easily break your neck on the rocks. Look at that, we actually made it to the other side. But now we have to climb down a bit, which isn't any easier. Here we are, almost made it, just a little bit further. As you would expect, we are not the first ones to make it up here either. Can you see the graffiti down there? It's swastikas, of course. Well, at least they are crossed out. Finally we can get a good view of the cliff from this side. Looks rather nice, doesn't it? What do you think? Do you notice anything? I'm talking about this bit in particular. Let me try to get a better angle. There, this is much better. Unfortunately, this is the best I can do with the camera I have available at the moment. Now, I don't know about you, but to me this looks like two large chunks of concrete. The shape seems too regular to be a natural rock formation. So my best guess is these are some more bunker remains. Unfortunately, vegetation is so dense I can't get any closer. Let's try a different direction and move towards the tip of the rock, pointing to France. Sadly, we are still too low to see much. You can just about see the road and catch a tiny little glimpse of the motorway. So let's turn back for now. When I did, I noticed something looking up the cliff. Can you see that up there? Very much looks like railing to me. Maybe we'll get a better chance to look at it later. For now, it might be a good idea to leave this area behind, for it doesn't look very stable. I mean, I haven't noticed any rocks falling or something like that, but I really don't want to wait for it to happen. Passing the passage the other way, I noticed something. Well, two things actually. For one, it's really beautiful up here. If someone showed me this picture and told me it was taken in Italy, I would believe it. As a matter of fact, this location is indeed known for its Mediterranean flair. I can certainly understand why. The second thing I noticed is down to the left. Any idea what I'm talking about? It's this bit down there. Let me try to get a better picture. There we go. Any idea what this could be? If you do, please leave it in the comments. I'm curious to hear your opinion. And no, it's not a Photoshop mishap. I didn't do anything to this picture. I do have my own presumption, however. So, here it is. I suspect this is one of the holes they drilled in order to put demolition charges in when they destroyed the place. This is just me speculating though. I can't tell for sure. Your guess is as good as mine. Continuing our descent, we're almost back to where we started. Very close to the chapel. Look, there it is. Can you see the wooden cross to the right? It's only partially visible in this picture, but it makes for a good orientation point. Here you can see it more clearly. We are on the town cemetery now, by the way. It is located directly beneath the rock. This section of the cemetery is dedicated to the fallen of the world wars, the graves of the Second World War being in front and the ones of the First in the back. We'll take a short look before we move on. This is the World War I memorial. The inscription on the rock in the back is in the local German dialect. It's a rhyme and will therefore lose somewhat in translation. But here is approximately what it says. My money and my property, my life and my blood, my everything for you, my home at the Rhine. Sad words indeed. We are all used to see Germans of this time as villains. Not in small part thanks to Hollywood. Many of them were guilty, sure. However, as it is usually the case with everything in life, things are more complicated than that. Especially when it comes down to the First World War. But enough with that for now. Let's leave the cemetery behind and move on. Now we are moving towards the town of Istein itself. You can see it directly ahead. However, before we get any closer, we need to turn left. Looks like we finally found a way to cross the railroad. A legal one even. There's another info panel to the left. It deals with geology and fossils. Here's a short look at it. However, we will not go into further details but move on instead. Crossing the tunnel, we enter the vines. If you are from the English-speaking world, you may not be aware of this, but southwestern Germany is actually quite famous for its wine. As a matter of fact, it's the content of the next panel we encounter. It tells about a special variety of white wine from the area. It's called Weißburgunder, or Pinot Blanc. Here's a look back at the vineyards. Of course there's more of it ahead, as is the rock. Let's move on and see where the road takes us. Looks like we finally managed to find a spot with a good view of the town. Can you see the skyscrapers in the distance? Those belong to Basel in Switzerland. That's how close we are. Returning to Augusta Raurica, the last location we visited, for a second, you can tell that these skyscrapers are indeed the very same, just seen from a different angle, since we happen to be north of them now instead of east. Here's a nice view of part of Istein and the railway. There's even a train coming through. Perfect timing. Now we have finally managed to reach the highest point. Unfortunately, the view is still severely restricted by vegetation. This is the best I can do for the moment. In this picture you can see 3 countries at once. The town of Istein down to the left, obviously in Germany, while the building to the right is already in France. And, of course, Basel, far away in the distance, in Switzerland. Moving on, further to the right, the Rhine itself also comes into view, as does a small piece of the German motorway. I also found a piece of a concrete structure I believe to be related to the German fortifications of World War II. Maybe an observation post. However, that's everything I was able to find up here. Unfortunately, I did not manage to get on top of the rock itself. The reason for it being once again, dense vegetation. I mean, just look at this. I would need a machete in order to get through. Or better yet, a flamethrower. I hope you're not disappointed and enjoyed our visit all the same. If you want me to come back and try to explore the bunker system, let me know in the comments below. However, researching the place, I actually found a video of someone who made it in all the way. I will post the link for you in the credits. If you happen to be interested in military history, I have good news for you. While this is the second installation of Day Trips, a major site of the First World War, including extensive trench system, is planned for the 5th. So, with any luck, just a couple of weeks away. There's yet another one, covering a German World War I fortress, planned for the 8th. The next episode, however, will be covering the French city of Mulhouse. But before we bring this one to a close, there's one more thing I would like to show you. It concerns the Isteiner Schwellen, meaning rapids in English. They are geologically related to the rock and not too far away. So here are some pictures from the rapids themselves and from along the way. I hope you have a nice day and to see you in the next episode.